Let's go through the entire Gospel of Mark together. All right, and now we're starting to dig into Mark chapter 8. We're going to read through Mark chapter 8 right now. Remember a couple of things, this messianic secret, as we've been going through Mark every day. Remember, this messianic secret is really where the disciples, the Pharisees, they don't really understand quite who Jesus is yet. And in chapter 8, we're actually going to get the first proclamation from Peter, which is huge and a turning point in our story. Let's go ahead and get ready to start digging in. In those days, when again a great crowd had gathered, and they had nothing to eat, he called his disciples to him and said to them, I have compassion on the crowd, because they have been with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away, hungry to their homes, they will faint on the way. And some of them have come from afar. And his disciples answered him, How can one feed these people with bread here in this desolate place? And he asked them, How many loaves do you have? They said, 7. And he directed the crowd to sit down on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves, and having given thanks, he broke them and gave them to his disciples to set before the people. And they set them before the crowd. And they had a few small fish, and having blessed them, he said that these also should be set before them. And they ate and were satisfied. And they took up the broken pieces left over, 7 baskets full. And there were about 4,000 people. And he sent them away. And immediately he got into the boat with his disciples and went to the district of Dalmanutha. Now, I think the really interesting thing is this is Jesus feeds the 4,000. That's how it's called in a lot of Bibles. This is chapter 8. But we were just in chapter 6 when Jesus feeds the 5,000. And I think it's so interesting because just 2 chapters ago, we just had the how do we feed all these people? And here we are again, 2 chapters later, and it's the same thing. How do we feed all these people? It's as if the disciples aren't learning. It's as if, and remember, we talk about this a few chapters back, when they're on the boat and the waves are crashing and they're worried, and Jesus says, do you still not have faith? It's because even though these things keep happening, the healings keep happening, the miracles keep happening, they're still like, how do we do this? And I think that's a big call out of how the disciples are portrayed in Mark. It's as if they don't get it. They don't understand. But let's keep reading. The Pharisees came and began to argue with him, seeking from him a sign from heaven to test him. And he signed deeply in the spirit and said, Why does this generation seek a sign? Truly I say to you, no sign will be given to this generation. And he left them, got into the boat again, and went to the other side. Now they had forgotten to bring bread, and they only had 1 loaf with them. Here comes his bread again, am I right? And he cautioned them, saying, Watch out, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. And they began discussing with one another the fact that they had no bread. And Jesus, aware of them, said, Why are you discussing the fact that you have no bread? And we just talked about this, how the disciples don't seem to get it. Do you not yet perceive or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Having eyes do you not see, and having ears do you not hear? And do you not remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000? How many baskets full of broken pieces do you take up? They said to him, 12. And the 7 for 4,000. How many baskets full of broken pieces did you take up? And they said to him, 7. And he said to them, Do you not yet understand? And this is so important for us reading this, because remember, these disciples, the people that they are talking about, these are the heads of the church by now. This is 30 years later. So as Mark is writing this, he's writing this as the disciples didn't get it. They didn't understand. They didn't know. But these are now the people that are dying for Christ. These are now the people that are running the church. These are the people that are giving everything to spread the news. That's how important it is. Now let's keep going. And they came to Bethsaida, and some people brought to him a blind man and begged him to touch him. And he took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. And when he had spit on his eyes and laid his hands on him, he asked, Do you see anything? And he looked up and said, I see people, but they look like trees walking. Then Jesus laid his hands on his eyes again, and he opened his eyes. His sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. And he sent him to his home, saying, "Do not even enter the village." And Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi. And on the way he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they told him, "John the Baptist, others say Elijah, others one of the prophets." And he asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "You are the Christ." And he strictly charged them to tell no one about him. Now there's two huge things that are happening here. Let's call out the most obvious. We keep talking about this messianic secret. Here it is right now. Peter says, "You're Christ. You're the Christ. You're who we've been waiting for." And he strictly charges them to tell no one. That's that secret. 30 years later, everyone knows. They're prophesying it. But right now, no one knows. The other thing that's really interesting, and we talked about this earlier a few chapters ago, is the way the author sets up the story. Because even though Mark, the author of Mark, is really choppy with how he tells the story, look at what he's doing. He's talking to them, asking them about the loaves of the bread, and he's saying, "Do you not yet perceive or understand? Are your hearts hardened?" And right after that, he's with the blind man. And the blind man doesn't see. Even when he starts healing him a little bit, he sees a tiny bit, but he doesn't yet fully see. And then he does it again, and it's clear. And then right after that is when Peter clearly says, "I now know who you are, you're the Christ." And that's the genius of a little bit of how Mark has set up some of the story. Now let's keep reading because we're almost done with this. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. This is right after Peter's the first time that Peter goes, "You're the Christ." And he's going, "Okay, now let me tell you what's going to happen to me." And he said this plainly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. So Jesus just said, "Listen, I'm going to be arrested. I'm going to be killed. And then in 3 days, I'm going to rise again." And Peter's rebuking him. And that's when Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." And calling the crowd to him with his disciples, he said to them, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel will save it. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? For what can a man give in return for his soul? For whoever is ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him will the Son of Man also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." Now I want to end on something, and it's not trying to push a button, it's just being honest. Jesus is finally, we get the first declaration in chapter 8 of Peter saying, "You're the Christ." And right after that, he's saying, "Okay, now that you guys know that, I got to suffer a lot of things. I'm going to get arrested, be killed, and after that, I'm going to rise again." Peter's rebuking him. He's taking him off to the side. And Christ is saying, "Get behind me, Satan. You're not setting your mind on the things of God." But right after that, look what it says. Jesus is saying, right after he told them he has to die, he says, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." What he's telling the disciples is, I'm going to this to the death. Anyone who wants to come with me needs to be willing to do the same. You know, we live in a 2025 world where we look at the Bible and we go, and I've talked about this before, we can just go to church, we could have a great time, we can have an amazing time, we could hit it on Sunday, have a few friends, have a barbecue. That's not what Christianity was here. What Mark is telling these people, this is a time between 67 and 70 AD, right before the fall of the Second Temple, or right around the time of the Second Temple, where Rome and Jerusalem are going head to head, where there's major persecution. And Mark is telling a story where he says, Jesus warned us he was going to give up his life for this and have to be resurrected for it. And he told his followers, you got to be ready to do the same. Look at the wording he says. Whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel will save it. In 2025, yes, that's a powerful thing that we can take at from a thematic standpoint. But when this happened, This was a physical thing that these people were giving their lives for. Being a disciple did not just mean learning about God. It meant giving your whole life to Him. Now let's get ready for chapter 9.